What's going on, everyone? It is your boy Thriller here, and we are here for the Week 4 Pickems of the BBL Season 12. If you guys are excited, if you haven't already, subscribe if you haven't already, and join the crew today because you're Thriller, the king of the crew. Now, a bit of a break in the fourth wall here. You can actually see the records of these coaches right here. So we'll actually kind of know kind of in advance if teams have won or lost, transactions that have been made going forward, and so on and so forth. But we'll talk about the teams as they are right now and kind of discuss some of the new mons that are added to the team as we discuss the matchups. So with that being said, let's go and break down these matchups here, guys. We have some pretty good ones here, and I'm really excited to talk about one of these games. So this game is going to be my game of the week once we get to it. First matchup here, though, is going to be Ant going one-on-one against D-Ray. Snow versus Snow, some would argue and state this matchup. Ant's team is Calyrex Ice Rider, Galarian Slowking, Meowscarada, Scizor, Walking Wake, Palmont, Basket Legion Female, Torterra, Munchlax, Moltres, and Stonejourner, with the Terra Captains being the Walking Wake and the Stonejourner. And a very interesting kind of situation here we've been seeing here with Ant's team as we're kind of seeing like 2 weeks into the team. He has actually really struggled to really do a lot this season. He has unfortunately lost 2 games in a row from what it seems like. I'll say I do not know week 3 spoilers. I will state that right now. I do not know week 3 spoilers. And some teams have also probably not played their week 2 games already, which I know Joey didn't because I think he's trying to play week 3 before he plays week 2, or he's trying to do week 2 before he plays week 3. I don't know. Again, whole this break in the four pole stuff's gonna be a little confused. But we're talking about Ant's team here. As he's gonna take on D Ray's team, and D Ray, who seems to be starting off really strong this season, which is really, really great for him. Really happy for D Ray. We have got Hiram White, Deoxys Speed, Annihilate, Alola Ninetales, Galarian Slowking, Cyclizar, Blaziken, Sandy Shucks, Thwackey, and Skuntank, which looks like he has made like a couple of transactions here. He has downgraded a couple of things and now has gotten rid of the Earthworm for, I'm guessing, Thwackey, and has got rid of the Talonflame for the Blaziken. Now, I believe this is Speed Boost Blaziken, and I definitely think that was a better pickup over the Talonflame. Talonflame wasn't a terrible pickup, but it was not long. It was massively weak to Rock on this team, which now that Rock does, I think is catched up a little bit better. I think Thwackey is also a decently good pick on type of team like this. But I do think having that grass train is going to be a little situational based kind of thing. So we're going to have to wait and see how D-Ray plays with that. But I think overall, some of these changes he made are really, really good. And it's really interesting to see how D-Ray uses these changes going forward. Obviously, he's in a good spot right now. So we'll see where he's going. So look at the matchup against D-Ray. Cali Ice. Name a switch in. There's no good switching on D-Ray's team, especially since D-Ray is almost forced not to bring his snow. Now, the reason why he's not for now, some of you might be asking, why can D-Ray not bring his snow? Well, the reason he can't bring his snow is strictly because of this type of a matchup, where D-Ray would love to have Veil in this matchup, but he's given the opportunity for a defense buff, the Calyrex Ice, which easily can come in on the Yellow and Ninetales and then just get to be able to set up a trick room, set up offensively, and then just take hits and start breaking down his opponent's team. So definitely something that we're gonna have to wait and see on how the matchup goes, and just have to see where it lands. But we'll see where that goes with it. I really think the Scizor is going to be a big issue for D-Ray. Scizor is pretty free into D-Ray's squad for the most part, which is really unfortunate for the matchup. Like, again, you guys remember their old teams. You guys can know what kind of the old styles built. So if we're going to go with these type of matchups that we see going forward, obviously these guys are playing week 3. No, wait for we're playing week 4. So the chances of these are still the same teams by the time we go. So, Walking Wake. Very interesting mon this matchup. It could be really interesting to see what kind of Terra type it is. Basket Legion female. So I don't really know if it comes. It's definitely a very good mon in this matchup, but I think if you bring it, it's definitely forced to be a Scarf variant. Scarf can be really good as there is no good ghost spam, and then whatever you can go with water, and then Ice Beam to round it out. What turn? Excuse me. Just overall, a really good mon. I do think it's going to be forced to be Scarf, though. Palmont, also a really good strong mon in this matchup. I think Reliable Blessing can be a really good factor into this type of a matchup against D-Ray. So definitely something to really note with that. Uh, Yumi Ascarada could potentially come. I don't think it's a guaranteed bring. The Torterra, again, another Pokemon that could potentially come, but not a guaranteed bring. Galarian Slowking, definitely think makes an appearance. Galarian Slowking can take on just about a good amount of these Pokemon. The only thing he kind of struggles to deal with is a little bit, let's say, these shocks to Nuri and dealing with the Yoxa Speed plus Annihilate. So definitely gonna be a mon that can definitely put a lot of good work into this matchup. But looking at the Race squad, and this is going to be a very tough switch-in for Ant, as he has no good switch-ins at all. He does not have a fairy type, which means Draco Meteors are free as all day, which might force that walking away to potentially be a Terry Fairy variant, which I think would be a little unfortunate. But shoot, would make a lot of sense still. But Draco Meteor plus Ice Beam literally is free. There is no good switch into this mon at all. I also think Blaziken kind of smokes here. Blaziken can get set up to a good position to where if it's not booster speed awake, after one or two speed boosts up, and again potentially a Swords Dance, this Blaziken can kind of just clean house against the entirety of its draft, if he is not careful about the positioning. Um, I also think Annihilate looks absolutely insane. I think a Terra Water Annihilate makes the most sense, but I could see something along the lines of like Terra Fairy as a good neutral play into most things. I could see something like Terra Steel. Terra Steel also makes a ton of sense. I could also just see, generically speaking, Terra Ghost, or just boosted up Rage Vistas, and stuff like that. And just overall, it was a good mon. Juxta Speed, another fantastic mon in this matchup as well. Do you think it's going to be more towards as a kind of spike stacking build this week? Just because I do think it's going to be really more important there. I do think this is over for me, and it's also going to be a little bit more defensive this matchup. I think it's going to be a really good offensive breaker, but I think it needs to be a little bit more defensive for this matchup. And yeah, I think this is just overall going to be a really interesting snow battle, but I think it can kind of just about go either way. Oh, this is a really tough one because I think what really I think what D-Ray has for an advantage in this matchup is that he can kind of just spam attacks into Ant, and Ant has a hard time switching into some of them. Whereas Ant has good, more kind of offensive pressuring over D Ray with his team. So I think it just comes down to what I think kind of looks the better option here. And if I'm gonna have to choose, I really do think I'm gonna go with D Ray here. Now, D-Ray, I think, can win this matchup just because, again, the offensive pressuring that he has in his team. Like, Kieran White single-handedly alone can 6-0, and if he is not careful. Like, he'd be almost forced to bring the Assault Glow Team, which means no chilly reception, which means if it needs to be chilly reception. In Trick Room, it needs to be like max def, which means it cannot be locked. AB, and then it can't be able to take 4 hits, especially defensive wise. So, really, I think overall this was a really good bring on his part, and I think it provides really good offensive pressure and offensive momentum. And I just think D-Ray can just punish a lot of things that it has on his team. So I'm gonna go with D-Ray on this one, and hope I'm playing my predictions right. Like I said, it can kind of go either or with this one. So um, yeah, talk about our second game here, and it's gonna be Joey taking on my homie Dell. And oh, I just barely missed out on seeing Dell's face there. So we have Joey's team, which is the Mewtwo, Terrazarud, Enamoris, Gliscor, Iron Crown from Arena, Gouge Fire, Smeargle, Avalok, and Vileplume taking on Dell in the BC Leos here. Dell has Urshifu, Single Strike, Solgaleo, Landorus T, Skeletor, Gilmora, Hisuian Electrode, Weavile, Unanimous T, Dundozo, one trio with Terra Captains, Beanie, Skeletor, and the Hisuian Electrode. Very interesting matchup. Let's look at it from Dell's side here. Dell is really going to struggle with Terrazarud, just because Terrazarud is really annoying because, like, of the fact that it can be something, many things. Like, it could be Terra Fairy, it could be Terra Darksteel, it could be something like Terra Flying, Terra Electric. There's so many other Terra types that he has to play around with. And the fact that Joey can just take a lot of opportunities to go with a lot of variations, like I think Bulk Up, Esty, Trailblaze, Life Orb, choice band, choice scarf. There's just so many opportunities here. Obviously, Mewtwo, massive threat. Now, I do think Mewtwo is forced to run the Cobra Berry in this matchup, though, if Dell really wanted to take advantage of this Mewtwo, because if Joey does not respect the dark spam from single strike, which single strike does have a really good match into Joey, uh, the good thing is here is Dell's going to force that Cobra Berry on Mewtwo and needs to try to find some way to break that Cobra Berry before Urshifu comes in if he can echo from there. Phew. Also, just to say, he just gets smoked by gouging again. I would think it would have to literally be Terra Water and be fully fizz deaf in order to take this thing on. I think Terra Water is the best Terra type into a Gouging Fire matchup, and then being fully physically defensive. Overall, I think it's a really good bring into the matchup itself. Um, I also really think Joey's Iron Crown is interesting. I think it could make appearance in this matchup. I don't think it's make it 100%. Vileplume doesn't come this matchup. Funny enough, I could see a Terra Avalugg this week. If it's not gonna be Terra Zarude. Terra Avalugg kind of low key kind of does a lot of work this matchup. It kind of just kind of sits there, and depending on what Terra Joey goes with, can do a lot. I do think Smeargle comes this game. Smeargle is going to be super annoying for Dell because Dell's only removal option is the Mortal Spin from Glamora. So that is going to be a bit of a problem right there. So again, another thing that we have to see that happening. So do you think that plays a bit of a factor here? But I do think there's some merits for it. What else does Joey have again? Enamus Gliscor Prim. Prim Arena could definitely see an appearance for Prim. Prim's pretty good mount offensively this matchup. Definitely could see a Specs variant with quick turn. That could definitely make a lot of sense. Gliscor, again, another mount I could potentially see be brought because of spike stacking, but Gliscor also kind of offensively does a lot of work this matchup as well. And then lastly, I literally just saw it. What was it? Enamorous. Enamorous kind of does come, kind of doesn't. It's not that bad in this matchup. It's not that great in the matchup either. I do think it's a really good model overall into most of what Dell has. And I think just Joey has a solid team in this matchup. So, looking at it from Dell's perspective, I do think his Urshifu is really, really good this matchup. His Urshifu really punishes Joey offensively, which I think is a really big thing to factor in for this matchup. The Solgaleo could potentially not show up, but I do think it would make a ton of sense to be brought still. Urshifu, I think, is a guaranteed bring. The Lando T, I could see being brought, but I also could see it not. I wouldn't be surprised to see a gravity variant, so that way Earth Spam is pretty free into Joey, as Joey does have a really big ground weakness to his team. Skeledirge, I think 100% comes. Skeledirge is the bane of Joey's existence. Like Joey stated on the stream back way then a few weeks ago when it came to the BBL, that Terra Skeledirge never dies. And Terra Skeledirge is just an annoying threat to so many people out there that it's just gonna be a bit more hindrance. I think Terra, his doing Electro also makes a potential appearance as well. Obviously, there's a couple of Terra type options. I do think flying and/or fire probably makes the most sense into this matchup with both it. At the Hisuian Electro, I do think Terra Water is the best bring for the Skeledirge in this matchup. So a lot of options there to go for this type of build. Weavile, I could see Weavile coming, but I wouldn't be surprised not to see Weavile written broad. Weavile, if anything, would be forced to be potentially scarfed if that is the case. If it also speaking of Mewtwo and stuff, but I don't really know if it's gonna fully be broad. Enamorous T, don't really think that's broad, but I could see the reason why Dell would want to bring it. But I just don't think it's a really good Bonnie at all, and I don't think it's a really good matchup for it. So Glamora and Dondozo. So Glim, I definitely could see being brought as Joey does have limited hazard choices to removal potentially. So I could see Glim being brought, and then the Dondozo definitely could see Dondozo. Dondozo as like a Spadef wall in this matchup could be really annoying for Joey if he's not playing cared around carefully. Dondozo definitely makes a ton of sense here, and I could just see a lot of things happening. So, but based on the matchup, I know I keep doing this, and I know a lot of people are going to think I keep picking him for this, but I realistically believe it's Joey. Joey just knows how to play matchups, and obviously Dell, he had a really tough one these last few weeks, but I think he can definitely pull out the win here. I definitely think he has a chance. And it's just gonna be one of those things that he really needs to play around and just needs to be careful with. I think that's the big thing he needs to really do is just kind of be careful with. Up next, we got Shuckle King taking on Seabad here. Shuckle King's team is Zacian, Iron Shreds, Ogrepon Wellspring, Latios, the Deoxys Defense, Petrarun, Hariyama, and Golden, which the Terra Captains being Terra Water, Wellspring, and then the whatever Terra on the irrelevant Pokemon. As he's going to be taking on Seabad's team here, which is right here. He has got Deoxys, Garchomp, Fable, Indeedee, Iron Hands, Brambles, Metagross, Chiyu, Manaphy, Diplin, and Jump Love. And he actually brought the Diplin to a game. I'm concerned. Uh, anyways, Seabad, let's look at his team going against Shuckle Kings. Fairy Spam Go Burr. There's no good Fairy resist besides a Metagross, which is easily forced to be brought this matchup. Which I think it can make really bad planning. Like when Shuckle is gonna know you're gonna be bringing that, he has good counterplay measurements to try to beat that Pokemon, which I think is really annoying. I think Ogerpon and Wellspring also just clicks a damn button in this matchup. Like the only resistance to water on Chase's team will be potentially the Terra Captains of either Hands or Indeedee, but only Hands would do really well. Bramble well, as we saw from Nexus with the Choice Bandit Ting Lu from week one, Bramble is not switching to anything. Manaphy are only best switching into the matchup here because Manaphy is a really good bulky defensive water that could really take advantage of any type of the hits that you would want to go for. But again, he just loses the grass. So Wellspring looks to really overwhelm Seabad this week and is going to be a really annoying Pokemon to deal with. Iron Shreds could be a problem here. I think Iron Shreds has got a pretty decent matchup. I definitely could see it. Very interesting to see what kind of tread set he goes with. I can see AV, so he can guarantee takes one hit from stuff like Deoxys if it's not Life Orb, potentially take one cheating hit if it's on specs, and one hit from Manaphy if it's on specs as well. Or setup, just overall, well, they can definitely do it decently here. I do think the Deoxys D probably comes for just the funny reasons. But I do think having the option of pretty much starting to stack hazards, I think is really good here. And actually, I'm going to do some work, guys. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that, guys. Had to just go take care of something real quick. But we are back, and again, looking at the matchup here for Shuckle, Darkrai, kind of a hit or miss this matchup. I think Darkrai makes a ton of sense. I think Darkrai could be left at home, but Darkrai does make a ton of sense for what it can do. Like yes, defense we already mentioned about. Pecharunt is a wild card in this matchup. I personally feel like because Pecharunt is very good, but it's also very bad in this matchup. So Pecharunt, in my opinion, is the wild card here. I think also Hariyama can also be a low key wild card this matchup. I think Hariyama can do quite a bit into some things on his team, but also can do less for his team. So I think overall, this was there anything else Chuckle had that we didn't talk about? Latios is live. Latios, I definitely think is really good in this matchup. Latios can really hit. Dual stab hits insanely hard. There's only one switch into dual stab, and that is going to be the Metagross, but then can easily get counterplayed with having just Shadow Ball. So this could be a very interesting Latios bring we see this week, but it would be not to be surprised. So, Shuckle's team, he loses to Deoxys. Quite literally. Now, the set that Chase would have to be bringing is something along the lines of Cobra, Sash, Life Orb, Extra Ball. There's a lot of variations of this set, so it could be a little rough to bring the Deoxys in this matchup, trying to figure out exactly what you want to bring. It also is the Deoxys versus Deoxys matchup, which I am really looking forward to that as well. Garchomp's an interesting pick here. I do think Garchomp is a little bit bad this matchup, in my honest opinion. Between two fairy type, between having a dragon, a fairy, and a ground that can just take a hit, knock you on one shot, and then the amount of ice coverage. I don't know if it's gonna be broad. I mean, definitely could make sense. I could see something like Scarf. Scarf would make a ton of sense. Clefable could see it being brought, but I also could see it not being brought. It just really kind of depends on what type of playstyle Chase wants to go with Clefable this matchup. Iron Hands, I really like Iron Hands this matchup. I do think there's going to be a lot of variations of Iron Hands we can see here. I would probably say the best set into a matchup like this could be potentially like water. Water's a really good defensive typing, but obviously Petrol's a thing. There's also grass. Grass is also good, but then again it gets beaten down by things like Petcheron and then the coverage from his opponent. Like I don't know. I think Iron Hands is pretty decent. Indeed, don't think it comes. Indeed's kind of a worthless pickup in this matchup. I think if you're bringing Indeed, you're really just trying to bring expanding force, which could make sense in this matchup. But again, with having two phenomenal, with one really solid resist with Deoxys defense, and obviously the immunity and a mon that can't get two shots still. But I do think it's a little bit risky to bring Deoxys with the expanding forces matchup. Bramble Gas, just don't bring it, Chase. It's not going to do anything for you, man. Just don't bring it. Chi Yu looks like it has a lot of fun this matchup. Chi Yu can really be positioned well. I think I like actually a sub leftovers variant. Leftovers just to get the passive recovery, but sub because that way you get a guaranteed head off on anything that comes in, which is really important, and you can do a lot of damage. In my personal opinion, I think Manaphy comes. Now, why should Manaphy come? I think Manaphy comes with Ringo Berry and just really just sets up a tail glow, energy ball, surf, and then whatever coverage movement wants, whether it's Dazzling Gleam, Psychic, Shadow Ball, you name your coverage, but Manaphy comes this week. Manaphy is super good into a lot of ways. Now, I do think this is to be a very bulky variant of Manaphy, though, in order to take on at least getting about 2 to 3 KOs from Shuckle's team. So I do think it's going to be something there. Dipplin and Jufflin, I don't respect them. They're not coming. Yeah, we talked about that. And then Metagross, like I said before, it has to come. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It does have to come to this matchup because it needs to be has to do the fail-safe check of the Zacian, if anything. But for this matchup, I am going to go ahead and pick Shuckle for this one. I do think Chase has good pieces into the matchup, but I do think that it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for Chase to position these pieces, where Shuckle can kind of just freely, if he gets hazards up, starts punishing switch ins and it just starts overpowering his team. So, do you think Shuckle has the advantage going into the matchup here? But Chase can definitely pull out the win. Chase has proven that you could have the worst matchup and win. Every draft league player's been able to prove that in their career, and it'll be interesting to see how this one is going to go. All right, talking about matchup number 4, it is going to be Big Obo versus Big Kigo. A very interesting matchup here. So obviously Owen made some transactions, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's talk about Keegan's team first. He's got Lunala, Greninja, Terraking Gambit, Forge, Blastoise, Infernape, Bronzong, Dunsparce, Houndstone, Mudsdale, and Swalot. Obo's team has got some new changes, but we'll talk about them when we get done talking about his team. He's got Groudon, Terra Raging Bolt, Screamtail, Rillaboom, Sneasler, Mandibuzz, Volcanion, Hisuian, Gudra, and Porygon 2. So he made a couple of transactions. He dropped the Bayonet, which I think was potentially Terra. Um, but he dropped that. He dropped the Milotic, and he dropped something else. I don't think it was. No, it was just a Milotic. I picked up Volcanion. Now, I don't know how I feel about Volcanion on some teams. Like, obviously, the boosted firepower is really, really good. But you also get a water type that now can't use any of its water moves to its best full effectiveness. So that is going to be something that we're going to have to wait and see how that affects Obo in the future weeks. But I do like the fact that he did finally pick up a fire type to take advantage of the sun that Groudon does bring. I personally would have loved to have saw something else being brought up, but who knows what to say. But regardless, let's look at this matchup. Let's look at it from Keegan's perspective. So Groudon already looks like it's going to be a nightmare to deal with, and Groudon is very good offensively into Keegan's team, which is a really big struggle for him. Terra Raging Bolt, his beloved, that he loves so much, and it's gonna be a really interesting one to see how this one breeds brought. Like, there's a couple of variations, come ideas from what I've seen from people. But this is a very interesting matchup for Bolt, where again the ground type is Mudsdale, but the ground type is not a threatening ground that we can not just be able to take on. Screamtail, which is Keegan's favorite mon of all time, he has to try to take it on. I do think he's going to purposely bring Screamtail just to mess with Keegan, which would make sense. It's definitely a Joe. It's definitely a Obo thing. Rillaboom, honestly, kind of has a pretty good matchup here, but it's also got a dog water matchup as well. I think really good utility for the Grassy Surge this week is really great. Sneasler, I do think, unfortunately, I am sorry, Jricky, I do think an Unburdened set is really good here, but I don't realistically like Grassy Seed. Now, the reason why I don't like Grassy Seed is this matchup is that I think a little bit more of the Spadef variant is a little more better. So what I personally would love to see is more of a white herb set. Now you may ask yourself, why white herb? What does that specifically do for you? Now, obviously, if there's any chance for Keegan to lower stats onto the Sneasler in some form of capacity, he can be able to weaken the stats of it, which I think is really, really good. Now, I like also white herb because of the fact that you can just get a free close combat on something that is not Lunala, and you potentially fresh pressure in, it opens up the door there as well. Now, I also could see some of the lines of maybe something of like being Sash. I could see something along the lines of this or that. Like I could see a lot of variations of Sneasler. Sneasler is just a very good mon here, and I actually really love it. Mandibuzz, don't know if you'll bring it, but it would make sense why, because it's a Lunala matchup. You want to make sure you have a really good Lunala counter. Volcanion can definitely make a good, strong first debut this week. I think fire coverage is insane into Keegan's team. His only really good switch into fire is going to be Heat from Bronzong, which kind of has to be levitate for the Groudon, and then he having the Florges and the Blastoise for decent depth walls. But again, they can be overwhelmed, especially in the sun, so that can be really interesting. Swinging Gudra, don't really know if it's broad. I don't think it's that good of a mon. And Porygon too, could see it being broad. Porygon's not that bad of a mon in this matchup, but it's not a great mon. So looking at Obo's side, name a switch into Moongeist Beam that's not a Porygon 2 or a Mandibuzz. Yeah, these are non-existent. Like Calm Mind variants are scary. Specs variants are scary. Scarf variants are scary. Greninja is a massive headache for Obo because there's two sets that come. It's going to be the same two sets that everyone preps. Is it going to be Battle Bond or is it going to be Protean? Now, in this specific type of a matchup, I can see Battle Bond proccing, as it is an ability that can take advantage of the Unburdened Sneezer, where it does need to get its Unburden off in order to outspeed, which I think is really important to know. So, definitely could see Battlebond. I would also not be surprised to see Protein, but I think Battlebond makes the most sense for this matchup. Terra King Gambit. Terra King Gambit can kind of be a mixed array of different type of Terra types here. I do think it's got a pretty good matchup here, though. The majority of what Hobo can have here. I do think I like a Supreme Overload build this week in this matchup over having Defiant, as you don't really need it really to remove hazards, as there's no real hazards set from Hobo. What could be really interesting there. Florges almost feels like a forced bring this matchup to be able to deal with things like Raging Bolt, Volcanion, and stuff like that. But I don't feel all confident he is going to be that. Blastoise, again, another Pokemon that may or may not even be brought. It's not really considered. Infernape. Now, Infernape, let's talk about this. We're bringing Sun, and we're bringing arguably a really super good, strong Fire type into this matchup. And I really think that this could be a match where Infernape could finally beat the fraud allegations. He could finally beat the fraud allegations this week, and I do think it's going to be a really good matchup for Infernape this week. Bronzong, don't really know if you bring it. It's really kind of a mixed bag of good and bad, but I don't know if it's 100% going to be broad. The Dunsparce definitely could see that thing being brought as a really good support piece this week. Uh, Houndstone, he's just there for the time being. Mudsdale, again, another Pokemon. Don't realistically know if it's going to be brought. I think if he's got to be forced to, he could. And then Swallow to Swallow. For this matchup, though, this is really tough. I think they both have bad matchups into each other, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. But they have some pieces for both of each other that are really good. Um, I guess if I had to go potentially based on paper, I'm gonna probably say Obo. And the only reason I'm saying Obo is I do think he can offensively pressure Keegan here with his team. For what he can do with it. Like I think with Groudon, you can go Rock Polish 3 attacks and just break as much as you want. Then Raging Bull could potentially clean up. You know, things like Sneezer in the back, which can revenge kill and sweep games in the end. Potential scarfers and just offensive breakers that can just end the game as well. So I think just by a smidge, I'm going to give it to Obo. I think Obo can do relatively well in this matchup. And that's Row taking care of players. So next matchup, and I am really looking forward to this one. It is going to be my man John Jr. going one on one with Vepsis. And this is going to be a hype matchup. And spoilers, it is my game of the week for week 4. And I'm doing this because not because of the matchup wise. I think when you look at the players, and fun fact, Vepsis and John have faced each other a long time ago back in Gen 7, where John really kind of smoked Vepsis with Charizard X. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how John does in another matchup years later taking on Vepsis. Really should be a good matchup here. Bepsis Steve, in case you guys did forget, is Rayquaza, Iron Valiant, Mesprit, Klefki, Alomola, Mug, Thunderous T, Rhydon, which are both his Terra Captains, Serena, and Incineroar, where John's team is consistent of Ho-Oh, Kyurem, Black Gold, Dingo, Iron Boulder, Grimmsnarl, Toadstool, Galarian Weezing, Azelf, Swampert, and Grotto. And it's going to be a really interesting week this week for John, as he's going to have a really interesting matchup here. So, looking from John's perspective, I think when you look at this, there's only one Pokemon that comes to mind, and that is Zamazenta and Iron Valiant and Rayquaza. Those three all together are going to come every single week. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They come every single week, and it's going to be no different, no brainer type of stuff like that. So it's going to really be an interesting matchup here for John to deal with that trio of combination. Also between his uh, both Terra Captains, definitely think of a fair shot to be brought in this matchup. Both Terra Captains do fantastically well. Incineroar, I don't know comes. I don't think it's that good of a mon. I think Alomola makes a guaranteed appearance this matchup. Alomola is very annoying for John to deal with from the defensive standpoint. I think Klefki with screens and spikes are really important this matchup, which I guess plays a lot of a factor going into this one. I do think the Muck doesn't come, but I could see Muck coming if he doesn't feel like Galarian Weezing makes a ton of sense into him, and then he can get T spikes up, which would make a ton of sense. The Mesprit, I don't know if it comes, but I definitely see it coming because of the fact that it does have access to Thunder Wave, U-turn momentum, and Stealth Rocks, which are going to be a big factor into this matchup. So looking at it from now, the respective of John here, Kieran Black can kind of go crazy if it's positioned correctly. Ho-Oh can also low-key kind of go nuts in this matchup as Ho-Oh does not have a really good switch into its tool set besides the Rhydon and Thunder's T. And then being granted, they do have the Terra, they are weak to them. And then also, regardless of Earthquake from the Rhydon, you can also lose to that Ho-Oh. Goldengo is interesting. I think Goldengo could potentially show up here. I think Goldengo is not a terrible one in this matchup whatsoever. Oh, Serena's a dumb first John. Um, Toad Scroll, I think, is almost forced to be brought again because hazard removal is going to be really important for John this matchup. Azelf is very interesting. Azelf, I think, provides really fantastically good offensive pressure. As you look at Vepsis' team, he didn't like. I don't think you bring in Incineroar. I think Incineroar is really well, but you'll be forced to bring in Incineroar just to stop Psychic spam. That's really all it is. Because Spec Psychic from the Azelf kind of just runs through. Galarian Weezing could see it being brought. It's not a terrible one in this matchup, but I think in terms of item lock, it's forced to either be Very Payapa, and it's going to be really tough for it to really be able to position stuff in order to really kind of just do offensive damage. So, very interesting one this week. Iron Boulder obviously comes now. What type of Tyra on Iron Boulder we see is going to be really interesting to see. I could see a lot of variations. I could see fighting. I could see fairy. I could see steel. I could see. We could see just about everything. The ones I named are just a good decent amount of them that I could see. being brought and just overall doing a lot of work into his team. Grimsnarl, I think green screens is always really great to be brought. I think screen force is good specific prep. So again, screen setting is also really good in this matchup for John here. And then Swampert. I could see Swampert being broad. Swampert's not a terrible one in this matchup. Getting rocks, flip for momentum, for slow momentum as well is really good. Overall, just it's a decent mind. So based on this matchup, though, oh, this is gonna be tough to decide. This is a tough decision. It's a tough decision because I do think Bo can win here, but I do think there's some factors that make a little more sense. So I do think, unfortunately, I love my boy John. Definitely think he's a great player and can win, but I'm going to go ahead and pick a Vepsis for this matchup. I think Vepsis just knows how to play his team right and just will be able to position and just start really just picking off KOs left, right, and center with him. So do think Vepsis has a good matchup here. Up next, we have got Amo versus Kale, baby. Amel versus Kyle should be a really fun matchup here, as Amel is king of creativity and Kyle is the king of unpredictability. So let's be interesting. First off, let's talk about some of the transactions that Amel made before we discuss his team. He dropped the Palkia Origin form for Lugia. He dropped the Volcarona for an Iron Bundle. He dropped the um, Terra Ogerpon for the Ursaluna Blood Moon. He dropped the Halucha for Terra Kama'o. And he dropped the Graveler. I think at least is what I think it is. The last one he dropped was Graveler for Superior, which I'm actually kind of surprised Abel did not make that his Terra captain. Even though Terra Como sounds scary. So with these changes, it keeps the double dragon. But it's very interesting. Lugia, if you guys didn't know, he actually had Lugia back in season 8. I think it was the season that Kurt won. The second season he won with BBL, I think. So it's gonna be interesting to see how he uses Lugia. Excuse me. Really interesting how he uses Lugia this week. Bundle will be very interesting as well to see how he's going to eventually bundle this. Arsenal Blood Moon, which Emil has had previous history with, and I think he's enjoyed it, so it's going to be interesting to see how he uses it again. Terracall is going to be really interesting this season. I think he can make a big wave this season if it is played correctly. Superior, another one that's been really pushing waves and being really good still, so really interested to see how it's going to do with Ubers. So, looking at Kyle's team, the team that's never lost, and it looks like they updated his week 3 game already. We've got Shinpao, Great Tusk, Ditto, Iron Mob, Sylveon, Rotom Wash, Arbolive, Jirachi, Spidups, Trapinch, and Giratina. So let's look at this matchup from the perspective of Amel, and let's look it up with Lugia. Lugia is a mon that I do think probably doesn't come this week. And the reason why is Chimpao and Giratina as the Ubers do offensively pressure it and kind of push it towards not being able to be used in this week's matchup. So definitely think it's a little bit tough for it to be brought here and kind of be used. So definitely a mon I don't necessarily see being brought, but we'll have to just wait and see on how that comes. But overall, I do think it's a mon that can really do some stuff, but I don't know. Dialga Origin, though, very good offensive pressure mon this matchup. I think it really provides good offensive breaking potential for this build and can do a lot for a team if played correctly. Ursaluna Blood Moon, I don't really know if it's gonna be brought this week. I think it's a really rough matchup for Ursaluna Blood Moon. But if it's brought, it's brought. I don't really know if it's gonna be doing much for him. Superior, another Pokemon that actually low key can kind of just win the game with good chip damage off on the Arboliva to an extent, the Armoth if it's Terra. So deficit to note there. Iron Bundle definitely comes. Iron Bundle is a Super 3 mon into this team as it has no drawback from clicking its dual steps. Had to read another fantastic well this matchup where I can see something like Trick room with weakness policy, being physically defensive, and be able to take get a weakness policy boost from Jirachi's Iron Head potentially, or being called mine and being able to take a sludge wave from Iron Moth. It's just overall gonna be a really interesting build for Amel this week. Gengar, another Pokemon that kind of hit or miss. I can see Specs, I can see Life Orb with a lot of variants and stuff like that. Terracomo O is gonna be really interesting. I don't realistically know what Terra Amo would bring this matchup, but Terracomo O can kind of just steamroll if it's positioned correctly. I think like a Terra Ground set could be really annoying. I also could see Terra Grass, Terra Fire, just a lot of variants on this mon that I could see doing this or that. You know what I mean? So very interesting one this week. So looking at Amel's team, oh no, so Umbreon, if you bring it, you just bring it. I don't think it's good. Chip Powell versus Abel is going to be very threatening. I think it's going to be one of those balls that pressures him offensively well. I can just do a lot of damage. Great Tusk is a massive threat to Abel here. Great Tusk is super threatening and provides really good offensive support. Ditto can be a wild card like every single week it will be. Ditto has always been that wild card mon in these games that can really just be a swinger or miss in how you're going to use it. And for Kyle, I think he's been using it relatively really well. And it's going to be interesting to see how Angel tries to come back. Ditto. Iron Moth, obviously a mon that can again be contingent for being broad because it's just a really good Pokemon and do a lot of things. Arboliva, don't really think it's gonna be broad. Trapinch, don't think it's gonna be broad. Spineups definitely kind of makes sense to be broad, but at the same time it doesn't, since now Amel's only removal option is going to be Magic Bounce on Hatterene, but who knows? He could surprise me. Um, Jirachi, definitely Jirachi makes a ton of sense to be broad. Jirachi is really good offensive mon in this matchup, but you just got to be a little careful with it. And then Giratina I could see broad, but at the same time it really doesn't match up that well in a lot of things. So definitely don't think it's gonna be that good of a mon in this matchup. So this is a really toss-up matchup because they both think they have again teams that are just bad into each other and are kind of limited in what you can do or not do. But based on what I'm gonna look at kind of preview wise on these teams, I think I gotta give it to Kyle. I think Kyle can really provide, especially if he can copy Dialgo Origin. Literally, Amel can't have a switch in at all. Like a Dialgo Origin has been shipped to the point where it gets two shotted by its own like Dragon Pulse or Flash Cannon, most likely Flash Cannon because of Hatterene potentially. And then it can just steamroll for the rest of the team. I will say it'll be interesting how Amel faces Ditto because Ditto I feel like is the ultimate counter to Amel in terms of just being able to see his prep, and also Amel has to basically face his own prep against himself. So really like that mindset from Kyle as well if he reads Ditto. So could be a really interesting matchup here. First time matchup, I'm pretty sure these guys that I know of. So really going to be interesting here. All right. Sorry about that pause there, ladies and gentlemen. You didn't hear a long pause. Obviously, I paused the recording, but sorry for the pause. I just wanted to get that stupid notification out of the way because I thought it was a really important thing. Nope, it was just John doing a ping for tour views because I'm going to be doing the BBL, well, not BBLs, but doing the JGL Uber tour that we're doing here, which is going to be a mini week where pool battles and then top 32 for brackets and stuff like that. I'm going to be uploading my run, so definitely be ready to check that out. Breaking the fourth wall. Probably upload that before you see this video. So yeah. But anyways, let's talk about the next matchup here, and this should be very interesting, as it is Viz taking on CB Marcus, and I find this interesting of a matchup, and the reason why I find it interesting in the matchup, it is the Yox's attack in its rain versus a Palkia origin slash Bolt and Sand. So this should really be an interesting matchup regardless here. So really going to be excited to see how this matchup goes for both coaches. So real quick, let's look at Viz's team. He's got the Deoxys Attack, Shaman Sky, Hisuian Samurai, Archaludon, Palafin, Pelipper, Ursaluna, Vikavolt, and Mimikyu. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how this week's gonna go for his team here, as he's gonna be taking on CB Marks' same team of Palkia, Dragonbolt, Zapdos, Excadrill, Tentacruel, Gardevoir, Ribombay, Suyin Voltorb, and Mienshao. So, going to be a really interesting matchup here between these two. So let's look at from Viz's side here. CB Marks, I should say. Deoxys attack. Do, do you really need to switch in? Like, there's nothing. There's literally nothing that stops this thing. Like, T-Tar is forced to be choppable. 100% is forced to be choppable. Even X-Control could be forced to be choppable if it doesn't tear into something that doesn't need to be choppable. So, something to note with that. Isuian Samurott, definitely a very annoying mon for Viz to deal with. I think he's almost forced to bring the Tentacruel this week, as he's going to be one of the good defensive checks to things like the Hisuian Samurott. Um, but overall, just a really good offensive breaker. Pelipper, I only think comes if it wants to boost the rain, but since there is a Palkia on the screen, I don't think we're going to see rain this week. Palafin definitely kind of is forced to be brought this matchup because he's a really good revenger. You do a lot of things once they're chipped down on the weekend. So really good mon this week. Mimikyu, another mon that actually does fantastically well this week and can be a really annoying mon to deal with if CB does not play around it carefully, which I think makes a lot of sense. Ursula and Vikavolt, I could see Terra on the Vikavolt. I also could see it not being a Terra captain this week. But you never know. And then Ursaluna, whether it's Terra or not, that mon is going to start breaking. That mon is so hard to switch into this week on CB Marks' squad. Like, I don't know any really good resist, if not answer to Ursaluna at all. So I think it's going to be a really good mon this week. Archaladon could show up, and if it does, I think it's forced to be scarfed, if anything. I don't really know if it's going to be brought. It's going to be really coming up in the air. And then last but not least, we have Shaman Sky, which, it's not a terrible matchup for Shaman Sky. It's not 100% a terrible matchup. But I don't know how confident Viz is going to be with Shaman Sky in terms of dealing with it. So it'll be very interesting to see how he plays around it and kind of uses it this week if he decides to bring it. But looking at CB Marcus' side, I love Excadrill this matchup. Excadrill, I think, with Terra Grass, if not, you want my honest opinion about where I should put my money on for Terra types? I'm going to put money on Terra Water for Excadrill. Now, you may ask yourself, why Terra Water when there's a Shaman Sky? Shaman Sky, again, a Honda is really rough to bring. I could see it not bring, I could see it bring. But if we realistically look for the Water is the best bring this matchup as Terra Water shuts down offensive hits from Samurai, Terra Water shuts down Palafin, and Terra Water can offensively check things like the Ursaluna if there's no Terra or if it's Terra type they can beat. So overall, I think is really great. Now, I could see Molebreaker drill with Scarf because Molebreaker goes through skies, which is really important to know there. So I could see that potentially happening. So that would be the most shocking thing right there. T-Tar, I definitely could see not being brought unless he really wants Sand for speed. Excuse me. So that makes no sense. Tentacruel, like I said, would only really come as a really good defensive check. Mian Shao is interesting. Mian Shao, if it's Scarf and it's not Scarf Shaman, I do think Scarf Mian Shao can kind of just clean up late game if it is positioned correctly. Especially if you also get rid of the Shaman Sky. Seeing Voltarb, you know what? He'll stay on the bench, but you know what? At least he's happy doing it. Dragapult. Very interesting mon this week. I think it could come, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't. I do think Dual Stab Duel does insanely well here, so it'll be really interesting to see if he does bring that or not. Palkia is a guaranteed bring. Palkia has no switches. And I think this really overwhelms Viz, so definitely a mon that's going to be really hard for him to deal with. For this matchup, though, I think I'm gonna give it to CB. Now you may ask yourself, why in the world am I giving it to CB? Well, here's the thing about CB's team. I personally love CB Watkins' team because Sand Control is so good. And even if it's Culver Berry on the Axis attack, if you burn the Culver Berry, you're weakening that Culver Berry and the potential priority in the back. And then for sucker punches, that means it can't take a hit, even if it probably wouldn't, even though there's a chance it won't cover. But I think just having that option is really, really good. I also just think with taking advantage of rain and then also taking advantage of real sand it really works that you have basic control of the white of the entire matchup. So I think that's one of the reasons why I really like Marcus's matchup here. And Viz definitely could win. Viz has proven that he can win with this team, and we'd be surprised if he can. But against Marcus, I'm going to go with Marcus. The one I got here, I think Marcus can definitely win. Up next, we got my boy Jason, aka Diet Tight, taking on the homie and my goat Nexus. Nexus team is with Girna Spectre, Ting Loose Talents, which is Terra Captain, Cinderace, Uxie, Urshifu, Rapid Strike, Wheezing, and Terra Abomasnow. Well, my boy Jason has got the Zamazenta, Giratina Origin, Terra de Krasma, Snorlax, Thunderous Incarnate, Azumarill, Mimichwan, Fortress, Sui Quillfish, and Terra Minior. Now, this is a rough matchup here again, as we do not have a good matchup. Again, we run into the Mon that really just excels us in Magearna. Magearna is a very threatening Pokemon. It can pretty much just steamroll us if we are not careful and we have not prepared correctly. Spec's interesting this week. Spec could definitely come. It could also not come. Now, obviously, it could come because it's a really good Mon. We have very limited answers to go, so obviously we haven't seen Quillfish, but my shot's a thing. The only real answer we have to this Pokemon is going to be Snorlax. And Snorlax is going to be forced to be a potential rest sleep talk variant, as we're going to easily get burned any chance we could get. So I really think that's going to be tough. We're probably almost forced to go Terra Dark, if not normal, on the Spectre as well, because we need something to potentially check. And if it's that Necrozma, then it would have to be, which I think is really annoying. Tinglu, Tinglu makes sense, but also doesn't make sense. I would probably say it's definitely not going to show up. I think it's a really rough red. Cinderace, another mod that I really think could come, but I wouldn't be surprised too much by next if he didn't bring it. As we would see, he hasn't really bringing the Cinderace. So could be interesting to see how that goes. But I do think Cinderace has a pretty decent matchup. I don't think it's the greatest matchup, but it's pretty decent for what it can do into the matchup. Urshifu Rapid Strike, another Pokemon that don't really know what it's going to do, but it can offensively pressure us very hard if we are not careful and we do not play it correctly around it. Obama Snow really only comes if he really wants to fail. I don't think Obama Snow really does anything else for you really in this matchup. Uxie could see it. I could not. I don't know. I think if anything, the confidence is going to be our rock center. And then, of course, we got Bench. Excuse me. Terra Salamence. And I really don't know what Terra type we go this week. I think he's either going to go with Electric, so we can take on Thunderous and Azumarill, and also Electric, so he cannot be prankstered into that. I could see Dark, so it could be able to take on Giratina Origin a little bit more better, and also immune to Prankster. But I also could see Flying, because Flying Spam pretty much cooks us. Like, Thunderous, if it gets chapped after one Dragon Dance, it gets 2 KO'd by the Terra Fly, and it is potentially will calm or weakness policy behind the screens. It literally will just win the game. So, overall, I do think Salvage is going to be really threat. Wheezing, I don't really think it comes. It's not that much of a threat. Unless it was to be a really good defensive pivot, which it definitely could be, but who knows. But look at Nexus's team. Zaba go crazy if we play around it right. Shit. Zama is definitely a really good mod into the matchup. I think Giratina Origin is going to definitely be brought here. He is a super hard hitter this week and can definitely do a lot of damage this week. Just have to play around the switches, play around the offense, and then we can pretty much just get so many knockouts with this one. Can do a ton of work. Necrozma obviously comes. Like I said, I don't know what kind of Necrozma variant of a Terra Captain it's going to be this week. I could see setup. I could see bulky screens. I could just see a breaker. It could be just about any damn thing you would really want it to be. So very interested to see how it's going to be used this week. Snorlax against Snorlax almost feels like a force ring because it's a pretty decent mon into the matchup and it can do a lot of work for what it needs to. So overall, a fantastic Pokemon. But I don't know if it's guaranteed to bring, but I feel like if Jason's scared of Stretcher, he will bring it because he really needs to. Thunderous Incarnate, another Pokemon that can do pretty well in this matchup. I think spreading Thunder Waves is really annoying and can be a really big bothersome for Nexus, so definitely just something to note there. Terra Minior, I would love to see Terra Minior pop off, but I don't know because of things like Ting Lu. Ting Lu and potentially Sucker, it's gonna be really hard to see which is gonna be ring. Also, there's also the option of Aqua Jet from Russian Rapid, so I don't know if we're gonna really bring Terra Minior this week, but we could bring it potentially. Who knows? The Sicilian Quillfish definitely could potentially make a appearance. Like Spike Stacking is also really good in this matchup as we have very little removal on the other side. The only removal that you have is Court Change with Cinderace, which could potentially do a bad situation. Who knows? Overall, very good mon. Could definitely do a lot. Azumarill. I think bringing it versus Nexus is almost poetic because it is his mascot, it is his boy, and I think just to beat him with it would be a lot more funnier. But in all seriousness, I actually don't know if Azu comes. Azu, I think, has a really good matchup offensively, but I don't know how this handles defensively. So definitely gonna be one of those kind of things that before any potential battle happens, like I would probably do more testing to see if it's gonna match up well before making any final decisions. Remember Schwein, my boy Schwein, man. Definitely could be a Mammoth Spawn game. It could finally be a Mammoth Spawn game. I think Ice and Ground is really hard for um, Nexus to really play around with. So I do think it's gonna be a mon that he can do really well with and have some fun times with it. But if I had to pick for this matchup here, I think we go with Nexus. I think Nexus can pressure us offensively enough with some good momentum pivoting with things like Urshifu and stuff. So really be tough to really see Jason pull the win here. But again, I have good faith in Jason, and I do think he can definitely pull up this win if he wants to. Up next, we got OG Albina taking on Shimpack, a really hype matchup. I know that I was gonna be super excited to play this match. We have Chimp here with Zekrom, Torrentine, which is his Terra Captain, Terapagos, Tinkaton, Landers Incarnate, Sinistcha, Overquill, Ogrepon, Heartflame, and Keldeo, where Owen's team is the Yalga, Fluttermane, Terra, Mew, Crocodile, Ogrepon, Quarterstone, Quable, Pheasant, Dibiday, Shaman, and Roaring Heat. So look at this matchup from the perspective of Owen. Zekrom claims every single KO. Now, this is one of those moments though where Zekrom is going to be forced to remove speed. I think speed tie things like the Dialga, so it's going to be really important for Owen to really take into consideration. Also, potentially force a booster speed, if not choice Scarf with the Flutter Mane as well. I love Flutter Mane in this matchup. I think Specs would be a lot better. I think Scarf is a good fail safe and for a lot of reasons for what it needs to be. But I do think he can fit a modest Scarf build this week. If not, he's forced to be timid, which still is good, but who knows how that will affect the gameplay. Terapagos, a very interesting mod into Owen. I do think it has the potential to be broad, but again, look at Owen's team. Very little hazard, so I don't fully expect him to want to bring Terapagos to be a hazard mod. I'm expecting things like Rock Polish, 3 attacks, Calm Mind, and just start claiming KOs type of thing. Just a really annoying mod. Speaking of annoying mods, there's no annoying more mod than Torrentine. There's no way in hell that he will be stupid enough not to bring that Pokemon. That mod is definitely 100% coming, and Owen just has to let it happen. There's nothing he can do to stop realistically a Torrentine from doing anything he wants against you. Lando I could potentially be brought. I don't think it's a great matchup for Lando I. I don't think I hate Lando I's matchup, but I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting to see how he does for this. Ogrepon Heartflame, I guarantee bring a 100%. I'm gonna see it be brought. Definitely a very scary mon offensively. It can really put on a lot of offensive pressure that can really overwhelm more opponents than it does the player itself. Overquill could see being brought in case he wants a hazard stack. Sinisha, kind of the same thing. If he wants to be like a defensive picker that annoys people, I could see it being brought. And then Tigaton. Tigaton might be the only one I feel like doesn't definitely be brought, but again, that's my opinion. So looking at this next matchup, we've got not matchup. Looking at this team, we've got my boy Owen here. When it comes to Chimp's team, though, I think Flutter kind of just obliterates everything. Dialga is also a very strong ball in this matchup. I don't know 100% if Dialga is going to come this week, though, but I do think Fluttermane is a guaranteed shot. Fluttermane is very annoying to deal with and is very offensively good into most things that Chimp has on his entire team. Coquable is a wild card here because Coquable can do a lot here. I think with the option of potentially getting that speed boost or two, and then be able to take things down like Zach Rob, then you can pretty much take on just about everything else into the team you have. And just overall, it was a really good, strong Mon. Super good Mon in this matchup. Ogerpon Cornerstone definitely could see it being brought. There is no real good rock switching unless you tear your Torn into something, and then obviously the Tinkaton, but and also potentially Keldeo, which I actually didn't mention Keldeo. Keldeo, I think actually could show up as well, but I'm not 100% certain. So, but just super strong Mon that the Ogre Power would be. Crook is really up in the air. I think Crook makes a ton of sense for this week. And I am going to probably lean towards Crook being brought because Crook is a very good Mon into most things that um, Chimp will have to kind of counter and play around with. So, definitely something to note there. Pheasantipity, Shaman, and Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat I could see as a good screen setter. It definitely would not be a horrible idea. I also could see something like Will-O-Wisp, which makes a lot of sense. Pheasantipity, I could maybe see it, but it's just a trash mon. I don't really acknowledge it. Shaman, another mon that I just think is really bad this matchup and doesn't really do a lot for him. So, but based on this matchup, I think it's gonna be pretty much be between the Uber and the Terra versus the two Ubers. Oh, I think I'm gonna take Owen. OG Albina. I have faith in my friend. I have faith in my friend that he is going to walk away with a win this week and keep his momentum rolling and be able to just kind of keep things the way they are. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what your matchup of the week is going to be down below. Like I said, for me, it's going to be John versus Pepsis. I think that's going to be a hype matchup, and I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, thank you guys again, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until next time, guys. Bye.